The courtroom held its breath as a privileged teen, tried as an adult, dared to smirk at Judge Judy. He thought his family's money made him untouchable. He was about to learn just how wrong he was, in a brutal, public unraveling that nobody saw coming. The air in Courtroom 101 was a peculiar blend of stale coffee and the electrifying tension that always preceded Judge Judy's arrival. This wasn't just any Tuesday. This was the day a certain kind of privilege was about to collide head-on with an immovable force of justice. At the defense table sat a figure that epitomized a specific, infuriating brand of entitlement. His name was Julian Thorne. He wasn't old enough to buy a beer, but he carried himself with the swagger of a Wall Street magnate, head held high, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. This wasn't nervousness. This was pure, unadulterated contempt. He was facing charges so severe they could send a grown man to prison for decades. But Julian, despite his undeniable youth, was being tried as an adult, and he seemed to revel in it. He looked around the packed gallery, not with fear, but with a kind of disdainful amusement, as if the entire proceeding was a pathetic play put on for his benefit. The murmurs began to ripple through the room even before the judge took her seat. People shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between the young defendant and the empty bench, a collective dread settling in. They knew what kind of person Julian Thorne was. They knew the Thorne name, and they knew the kind of power that name wielded in this city. This was a class conflict, a moral battle, and everyone in that room could feel the suffocating weight of the power imbalance. Disaster felt not just imminent, but inevitable. Then, the door swung open. Judge Judy Scheindlin entered, a quiet, almost spectral presence. No dramatic flair, no booming entrance, just a calm, resolute stride that instantly commanded silence. The murmurs died. Julian Thorne, for a fraction of a second, lost his smirk. It wasn't fear, not yet, but perhaps a flicker of surprise at the sheer, unyielding authority that walked into the room. Judge Judy didn't look at him directly. She took her seat, adjusted her robes, and then, her eyes, sharp as surgical scalpels, landed on the young man. The courtroom felt frozen. The silence was heavy, dangerous. Even the bailiff seemed to hold his breath. Julian Thorne, ever so slightly, began to fidget. This was the opening salvo. "Mr. Thorne," Judge Judy's voice was a low rumble, devoid of emotion, yet piercing enough to feel like a physical jab. "Are you prepared to proceed?" Julian, regaining his composure, puffed out his chest. "Yes, Your Honor. Fully prepared." His voice was smooth, confident, almost arrogant. He even managed a polite, but completely insincere, nod. The audience gasped. A visible shockwave went through the gallery. This was a young man, facing a terrifying future, and he was acting as if he was ordering coffee. His audacity was infuriating. Judge Judy didn't react. Not a flicker. Her gaze remained fixed on him, unblinking. It was a stare that could bore holes through steel, and it seemed to be working on Julian's carefully constructed facade. He shifted again, a minuscule adjustment of his posture, but it was there. The silence stretched, becoming unbearable. It was a silence filled with unspoken questions, with the weight of expectation, and with the chilling promise of what was to come. "Good," she finally said, the word hanging in the air like a guillotine blade. "Because this courtroom isn't a playground for your amusement, Mr. Thorne. It's a place where consequences are served." Her words were delivered with the precision of a master surgeon, each one landing with deliberate force. She wasn't yelling. She was stating a cold, undeniable truth. And Julian Thorne, for the first time, looked directly into her eyes and saw not an old woman, but an apex predator. The prosecution began outlining the charges: grand theft auto, reckless endangerment, assault, and resisting arrest. The list was long, brutal, and painted a picture of a night of chaos and destruction. As the prosecutor detailed how Julian, behind the wheel of a stolen luxury car, had led police on a high-speed chase through residential streets, nearly hitting a school bus, then assaulted the arresting officer, Julian Thorne listened with an air of detached amusement. He yawned once, subtly, but enough for the camera to catch it, enough for the people in the gallery to let out a collective, frustrated sigh. His lack of remorse was palpable, a punch to the gut for anyone watching. The prosecutor concluded, "Your Honor, Mr. Thorne's actions demonstrate a profound disregard for the law, for public safety, and for the authority of law enforcement. He believes he is above the rules." Judge Judy turned her attention back to Julian. "Mr. Thorne, do you deny any of these charges?" Julian leaned back in his chair, a relaxed, almost dismissive posture. "Your Honor, I admit I was driving the vehicle." He paused, a theatrical beat, then added, "But it was a misunderstanding, a youthful indiscretion. My father has already spoken with the precinct. We're confident this can all be cleared up." He finished with a confident smile, as if that explanation, the mere mention of his father, should be enough to make the entire case vanish. The arrogance was breathtaking. The courtroom buzzed with outrage. Someone in the gallery muttered, "Unbelievable." Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "A youthful indiscretion, Mr. Thorne? Nearly running a school bus off the road, then hitting an officer? Is that what they call youthful indiscretion in your circles?" Her voice remained level, but the steel beneath it was now unmistakable. Julian scoffed. "Your Honor, I'm fully capable of handling myself. I'm being tried as an adult, aren't I? So treat me like one. I made a mistake, fine. People make mistakes. My family is prepared to compensate any damages. We can make this all go away." He flicked his hand dismissively, as if swatting away a fly. His confidence was a shield, forged in a lifetime of privilege, and he truly believed it was impenetrable. He thought money could solve everything. He thought he was untouchable. The courtroom fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. It was a stunned, horrified silence, laced with indignation. Julian Thorne had just explicitly tried to buy his way out of justice, right in front of the judge. The audacity of it was almost cinematic. People exchanged wide-eyed glances. Judge Judy, however, remained impassive. She simply stared at him, a predator assessing its prey. The silence felt dangerous, heavy with unspoken consequences. Then she spoke, her voice a low, chilling current. "You confuse wealth with character, Mr. Thorne. And you confuse the ability to pay fines with true accountability." She paused, letting the words sink in, twisting the knife just slightly. "This courtroom doesn't belong to your father. It belongs to the people. And in here, your money means precisely nothing." Julian's confident smile wavered. A tiny crack appeared in his carefully constructed facade. He swallowed, a visible bob of his Adam's apple. This wasn't the usual small-town judge his father usually handled. This was different. He tried to regroup. "Your Honor, I assure you, my family is very influential. My father is well-known. He has connections." He was trying to assert dominance, to flex his family's power, to remind her who she was dealing with. But it was a desperate, almost panicked move. Judge Judy leaned forward, just an inch, but it felt like a seismic shift. "Oh, I'm quite aware of your father, Mr. Thorne. I'm also aware that those connections don't extend to my courtroom. The only thing influential here is the law. And right now, the law is looking squarely at you." Her words were a verbal hammer, smashing against his carefully built illusions of power. The power dynamic in the room was visibly shifting. The gallery leaned forward, captivated. Julian's face was beginning to flush. "You speak of being treated like an adult," Judge Judy continued, her voice gaining a sharp edge, "yet your behavior is that of a petulant child who thinks he can stomp his feet and get what he wants. Let's talk about adult behavior. Shall we? You assaulted an officer, a man doing his duty. Do you recall that, Mr. Thorne?" Julian scoffed again, a nervous, defensive sound. "He got in my way. I didn't assault him. I merely reacted." He was aggressive. He looked toward his lawyer, a quick, almost imperceptible plea for help, but the lawyer, a seasoned professional, knew better than to interrupt Judge Judy in this mode. You reacted? Judge Judy's voice was now laced with pure scorn. You reacted by shoving a police officer, then attempting to flee again, causing him to fall and sustain injuries? That's not a reaction, Mr. Thorne. That's a criminal act. And an adult who commits a criminal act faces adult consequences. The courtroom murmured, a mix of agreement and a growing anticipation. Julian was losing his footing, and everyone could see it. He tried to puff himself up again. I'm not saying I'm perfect, Your Honor, but I'm a young man. I have a future. A bright future, I might add. This whole thing is a misunderstanding. It's blown out of proportion. He was pleading now, though he tried to mask it with bravado. He was subtly trying to invoke sympathy, playing on his youth, while simultaneously demanding to be treated as an adult. It was a desperate, contradictory maneuver. Judge Judy merely stared. Her silence was a palpable weapon, making Julian increasingly uncomfortable. The air in the room thickened with tension. Every single eye was glued to Julian, watching him squirm. A bright future, Mr. Thorne, she finally echoed, her voice almost mocking. A future where you believe the rules don't apply to you? A future where you can use your family's name as a shield for your reckless and dangerous actions. She didn't wait for an answer. She picked up a file, opened it, and her eyes scanned the page. The movement was slow, deliberate. It was a theatrical pause, designed to heighten the suspense, to make Julian sweat. He had no idea what was coming. This was his biggest mistake. The room changed instantly, a quiet hum of anticipation replacing the earlier anger. Everyone knew something significant was about to be revealed. Everything was about to collapse. Let's discuss the circumstances of this arrest, Mr. Thorne, Judge Judy continued, her voice now colder than ice. The officer who arrested you, Officer Rodriguez, testified that you were initially quite aggressive, refusing to comply, even before the physical altercation. He stated you continually asserted your family's influence and demanded he let you go because he didn't know who you were dealing with. Julian scoffed again, a nervous habit now. I was just making a point, Your Honor. I was frustrated. It was late. Frustrated? Judge Judy shot back. Or entitled. Officer Rodriguez stated, and I quote, he believed he was above the law because of his last name. He told me his father would have my badge. Do you deny that, Mr. Thorne? Julian hesitated. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but there was none. I might have been a bit agitated, Your Honor. I might have said something out of line, but I was under duress. Duress? Judge Judy's voice was incredulous. You were under duress because you were driving a stolen vehicle, endangering lives, and resisting arrest. Your duress was a direct consequence of your own criminal actions, Mr. Thorne, not some external force. She leaned back slightly, a subtle shift in posture that conveyed utter contempt. It seems your definition of duress is rather self-serving. The audience let out a collective gasp. Her words were sharp, cutting through Julian's flimsy excuses. He was cornered, and he knew it. His bravado was rapidly eroding, replaced by a sullen, angry defiance. He crossed his arms, jaw clenched, refusing to meet her gaze. This was the moment his ego began to truly collapse. He had believed himself untouchable, and now that belief was being systematically dismantled, piece by painful piece. And let's talk about this youthful indiscretion, Judge Judy continued, her voice now dangerously calm. You seem to be quite comfortable oscillating between demanding adult treatment and then hiding behind your youth when it suits you. Which is it, Mr. Thorne? Are you an adult, fully responsible for your actions, or are you a youth deserving of a lighter touch? Julian remained silent, glaring at the floor. He had no good answer. Judge Judy allowed the silence to hang, letting him stew in his own hypocrisy. The air crackled with the unspoken question. Every eye in the courtroom was on him, waiting for his response, for his unraveling. The tension was suffocating. Let me help you, Mr. Thorne, Judge Judy finally said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, yet it resonated through the courtroom with the power of a thunderclap. You claimed to be an adult. You demanded to be treated as such. You even bragged about your family's influence, as if that somehow makes you more adult than others. And your attorney agreed to these proceedings, knowing full well the implications. Julian's lawyer shifted uncomfortably, a bead of sweat forming on his brow. He knew what was coming. The entire defense strategy had been to portray Julian as a misguided youth, while simultaneously leveraging his family's power to mitigate the charges. It was a risky tightrope walk, and Judge Judy was about to cut the rope. "But there's something critical missing from your narrative, Mr. Thorne," Judge Judy said, her eyes fixed on him, piercing through his last vestiges of defiance. "Something that makes your adult swagger, your youthful indiscretion excuse, and your family's influence all crumble into dust." The courtroom held its collective breath. This was it. The silence was absolute, a heavy blanket that pressed down on everyone. Julian, sensing the shift, looked up, a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes for the first time. He probably thought she was about to reveal some damning new evidence about the crime itself, something that would further implicate him. He had no idea the true weapon she was about to deploy. Judge Judy picked up a single sheet of paper from the file. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. She didn't look at it. She knew what it contained. Her eyes were locked on Julian. "Mr. Thorne, for the record, can you state your full name and date of birth?" Julian hesitated, a sudden panic in his eyes. He glanced at his lawyer, who gave a nearly imperceptible shake of his head, a silent warning. But Julian, caught in the spotlight, felt compelled to answer. "Julian Thomas Thorne. My date of birth is October 17th. He trailed off, his voice suddenly weak, unsure. He seemed to realize the trap, but it was too late. Judge Judy didn't miss a beat. Her voice, still calm, sliced through the air. "October 17th, 2009. Is that correct, Mr. Thorne?" The words hung in the air for a full second, then detonated. 2009. A gasp, loud and collective, ripped through the courtroom. It wasn't just a gasp, it was a visceral, guttural sound of utter disbelief and shock. People sprang forward in their seats. Whispers exploded. 2009? That makes him. He's just a kid. The bailiff's stoicism cracked, his eyes widening. Even Julian's own lawyer looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Julian Thorne, the arrogant, entitled adult who had tried to intimidate a police officer and buy his way out of justice, was exactly 14 years old. He looked older, yes, but the birth certificate, now being held aloft by Judge Judy like a damning scroll, told the undeniable truth. His face, which moments ago had been defiant, then sullen, now drained of all color. He looked like a deer caught in headlights, utterly exposed. His adult facade shattered into a million pieces. The humiliation was instant, profound, and utterly public. He had tried to play the grown-up, to use his adult status as a shield for his depravity, and now that very status had become the instrument of his downfall. The irony was brutal. Judge Judy's voice, when she spoke again, was no longer merely cold. It was a deadly quiet, loaded with contempt. "So, Mr. Thorne, let's correct the record. You are not a young man facing youthful indiscretion. You are a child, a 14-year-old child who, by his own actions and his own insistence, demanded to be treated as an adult in this very courtroom. A 14-year-old child who stole a car, endangered countless lives, and assaulted a police officer, and who then, with staggering arrogance, tried to tell me that his father would make it all go away." Julian was reeling. He couldn't speak. He just sat there, mouth agape, eyes wide with a mixture of shame, panic, and a deep, mortifying embarrassment. The collective gaze of the courtroom felt like 1,000 needles pricking his skin. He had wanted to be an adult, to wield adult power. Now he was being given adult accountability, stripped bare of his privilege, and exposed for the childish bully he truly was. The emotional humiliation was immense. This entire time, Judge Judy continued, her voice gaining strength, each word a hammer blow, You presented yourself as someone who understood the gravity of these charges, someone mature enough to navigate the legal system as an adult. You chose this path. Mr. Thorne, you chose to sit here and smirk, to disparage the law, to dismiss the victims, and to threaten a police officer, all while hiding behind a false pretense of maturity and your family's alleged power. She paused, letting the full weight of her words settle. The silence that followed was different now. It was a silence of profound shock, of indignation, but also of a grim satisfaction for the audience. Justice was striking back, hard and fast. And now, Judge Judy went on, the truth is laid bare. You are a child who believes he can have all the privileges of adulthood, the fast cars, the disregard for rules, the freedom from consequences, without any of the actual responsibilities. Your behavior is not just criminal. It's a testament to a complete failure of character, a direct result of being raised in an environment where accountability is apparently a foreign concept. Julian's head dropped. His carefully coiffed hair fell forward, hiding his face, but the tremor in his shoulders was visible. He was finally breaking. The mask of arrogance had completely fallen away, revealing a scared, humiliated boy. He had tried to be a villain, but now he was simply a public spectacle of pathetic failure. Your Honor, Julian's lawyer, finally finding his voice, stood up, looking desperate. This is highly prejudicial. The jury was aware of his age, but the public performance is. Sit down. Judge Judy's voice cracked like a whip, silencing the lawyer instantly. The public performance, counsel, is entirely of your client's making. He chose to present himself as a hardened adult. He chose to act with unparalleled arrogance. And he chose to disrespect this courtroom repeatedly. This isn't prejudice. This is the consequence of his own actions being brought to light, in front of the very public he endangered. She then turned her gaze back to Julian, whose head was still bowed. Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice now a low, chilling warning. You wanted to be tried as an adult? You wanted to assert your adult status? Fine. Let's talk about what that means. It means the consequences of your actions will be judged not by juvenile standards, where rehabilitation is the primary goal, but by adult standards, where accountability and punishment for endangering the public are paramount. Julian slowly lifted his head. His eyes were red, but the tears weren't quite falling yet. There was still a flicker of anger there, a last, desperate resistance. My father won't let this stand, Your Honor, he rasped, his voice cracking. It was a pathetic, empty threat, stripped of all power. He was still clinging to the only shield he had ever known. Judge Judy let out a short, mirthless laugh. It was a sound that sent shivers down the spine. Oh, your father won't let this stand. Mr. Thorne, your father is likely going to have to let stand a very harsh reality for you. Because this isn't some backroom deal. This isn't some minor traffic ticket your family can sweep under the rug. This is a court of law. And right now, the law has its sights firmly on you, not your wealthy father. The raw power shift was breathtaking. Julian, who had entered the courtroom flexing his family's influence, was now utterly exposed, his last, desperate attempt at intimidation crumbling into nothing. The public humiliation was complete. His ego had not just been destroyed, it had been atomized. I tried to make my point. Julian stammered, his voice thick with emotion, the last vestiges of his bravado utterly gone. I thought if I acted like an adult, I'd be taken seriously. I didn't want to be seen as a kid. The raw, naked honesty of it was shocking. He had been trying to project an image, and it had backfired spectacularly. Judge Judy's expression softened, but only microscopically. There was no sympathy, only a cold, hard recognition of his misguided attempt. You wanted to be taken seriously, Mr. Thorne? Then you should have acted seriously. Responsibility, Mr. Thorne, is earned through actions, not through arrogant posturing and empty threats. And definitely not by endangering the lives of others. She picked up her gavel, but didn't strike it yet. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Every single person was on the edge of their seat, waiting for the final, Devastating blow. Julian looked up, his face a mess, truly terrified now. The court finds you responsible for the charges as presented, Judge Judy declared, her voice resonating with unassailable authority. Given your deliberate efforts to present yourself as an adult and your consistent display of disregard for the law and the safety of others, your plea to be treated as a minor is hereby denied. Another collective gasp from the audience. This was far worse than Julian had imagined. He had thought his age, once revealed, would be his ultimate escape hatch. Instead, Judge Judy had used his own arrogance, his own self-proclaimed adulthood, as a weapon against him. You wanted to be an adult, Mr. Thorne? Judge Judy's eyes bored into him, cold and unforgiving. Congratulations. You just earned yourself the full weight of adult consequences. This case will proceed to trial. And when it does, the jury will be reminded of every single word you uttered in this courtroom, every smirk, every threat, and every desperate attempt to hide behind your family's money. They will be reminded that you demanded to be treated as an adult. Julian flinched as if struck. The reality of her words hit him like a physical blow. The public humiliation wasn't over. It was just beginning. His future, which he had so arrogantly dismissed as bright, was now a terrifying, uncertain abyss. He started to visibly shake. The emotional collapse was complete. He was no longer a defiant teen. He was just a broken boy, facing a future he had unwittingly chosen for himself. Judge Judy then delivered her final, crushing line, her voice sharp and absolute. Your wealth couldn't buy you out of this, Mr. Thorne. Your arrogance won't protect you. And your youth, which you so willingly discarded, cannot save you now. Justice doesn't care about your birth certificate when you act like a criminal. She brought the gavel down with a resounding crack that echoed through the stunned courtroom. The sound was not just a symbol of closure, it was the final, definitive punctuation mark on the unraveling of Julian Thorne's carefully constructed world. The audience erupted in a wave of murmurs, a mixture of shock, relief, and profound satisfaction. Justice had been served, not just legally but morally. The arrogant had been humbled, the powerful exposed, and the self-proclaimed adult was left with nothing but the chilling reality of his own choices. It was a karmic punishment so complete, so devastating, that no one in that courtroom would ever forget it. The viral ending was etched into their memories, a stark lesson in humility and accountability.